Good evening. How are we all tonight? And how does everything look? I'm gonna make myself big for a hot second. Middle Kingdom onwards. That'll be a good 3 or 4 hour stream. Let me know if you can hear me. So it is late. It is quite something. We're going to eat Sunday's audience before we get into the meat of this tonight, talking about Israel and Egypt. But I thought we'd have a little late night stream. I'm up. I've been watching the news all night, waiting for a news alert to see who shoots at who first. Yeah, but David Copperfield just has a habit of making things disappear. But for the moment, let's go ahead. And let's tune into the tail end of Sunday and Beckett and see what's being said. Oh, it's not Nancy Reagan.
Tipster at this point.
I don't think I'm going after Keffels or Tipster here. You're asking me questions. I'm telling you my opinion on it. Okay. It's not really I don't think I've said anything that should make Clara feel attacked today. But as far as this issue, I think Discord servers in the aggregate have a really big problem with lack of moderation. It's like you've got a YouTube star, like they start off, it's essentially a teenager or a young 20-something shooting out of their bedroom with some shitty $20 lights from Amazon, right? And then they're trying to build a Discord community, so they loop some people in to act as moderator roles. You're desperately trying to find good people. They're all volunteers. No one is getting paid. It's not surprising to me in a system like this that the outcome is very, it does not have a lot of oversight for minors. So it almost feels.
Well, there's no real tools. There's no age verification that Discord really has. Or we do it like we do it in the cathedral. If you say you're over 18, normally, some exceptions apply, you're allowed to stay. If not, you're kicked. But we don't ask, because asking opens up a whole other set of problems, right? Yes, watching Sunday, watching Woo, watching, what do you call it? Like, asking opens up a whole bunch of other problems. Moderation is not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to get right. And most good Discord servers, mods talk behind the scenes about how to handle problems. Like, in all the well-moderated Discord servers I've been in, or been a moderator for, that's how it works. Like, it's not that people don't know what to do. It's that you have a whole bunch of people who know exactly what to do. They know right from wrong. They just don't care to enforce those things. So you get things like Spicy Chat, and you get things like Keffel's Discord. And that's that. Like it's not, oh, there's a systemic problem we can fix. It's just sometimes people are assholes and ill-suited to be in power.
To me, like Discord itself, the product has a role to play in this. Like, it's not engineered in a way to make that safe. Like, you're essentially trying to scale communities without any protection there. So I don't think Keffels has a monopoly on any of this.
Okay, well, I'll hand it over to Muda.
Well, yeah, Muda just joined us,
Yeah,
so I figured we'll just hand it over to him.
Hello.
I just kind of slipped in. I heard.
No, we had the door wide open. Man.
Don't worry.
Bro, look, I just got home this whole weekend. I'm out in like fucking Pennsylvania and shit, and I just managed to. I got home like I want to say like 30 minutes ago.
Right.
But yeah, so shit's been a wild weekend. I'm like the CEO of transphobia. So, yeah.
I really liked. I enjoyed your video, and I appreciate.
I will say, like, I read through messages that you sent me just now, and I kind of want to talk about like the DIY turkey stuff a little bit.
Sure.
Just to kind of like correct or not just like sort of more. I want to say flesh out what my thinking is.
Go ahead.
I am
yeah.
somebody that is very much a live and let live kind of guy, right?
Sure.
My only problem with any of this kind of stuff is I talked to 3 medical practitioners primarily, and Dad, my wife. You know, they're all people that will say anything DIY, any type of medication, they don't recommend, right?
Sure.
That's
I don't
the
recommend
only-
it either. 100%.
And my thing is always, so people kind of look at any video I make with the lens of US politics, which is why I also bring the US as a mention. But my view on this is very much from like a Canadian perspective, which isn't perfect, but it's certainly a lot better than some states in the United States for sure.
Wait, Muda's Canadian?
I assume so. I've never really checked.
Poor bastard.
So my thing is, look, as long as something is 100% safe, and I guess one of the things I probably should mention is like gender dysphoria, these things are real, valid, like fucking classifications. Any doctor will say that.
Sure.
I just wish that there was a system, and it's one thing I advocate for is like, if you want this to be accepted and legal and no issues, then that's the only hurdle to cross. I don't think that until then there should be any form of, or you know, there shouldn't be the other extreme end that should be promoted, right? Like,
Oh my God.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem with this. The problem is that this concept that Brianna Wu keeps bringing up, and Jenny Matrix, who's also a horrifyingly terrible person. The concept that they keep bringing up is this idea of if we just blend in a little better and we just pass a little better, people will accept us, and that's just not what's going to happen. This fight that we're going to be having about trans issues going into the next general election and the next midterm election is going to continue to happen. It's not going to stop because you win the fight. And if you lose that fight, they're just going to start pushing on gay rights. The people who hate LGBTQ people are never going to accept LGBTQ people. There's nothing that they can do to be accepted by those people. So, like, I don't understand, like, why you think you can just blend in and run rampant on this stuff. It's not gonna happen. You're not going to be like, there's no perfect formula to become accepted. You just have to be. And with regards to do-it-yourself medicine of any description, it's a bad idea. But I can see why people are doing it in the face of the difficulties they're facing getting access to healthcare. You don't think that the do-it-yourself abortions and illegal abortions haven't skyrocketed since the Supreme Court destroyed Roe versus Wade? You don't think in the states where Roe versus Wade was effectively destroyed anyway by state legislators well before the Supreme Court gave them the license to do so, undocumented do-it-yourself and illegal abortions weren't happening? These things are happening all the time. People are going to seek out care if it's going to save their life. People are going to seek out care if they want it. And that's a fundamental argument we've been making about being pro-choice for decades now. And the same for do-it-yourself hormones. People are going to seek these things out. Being opposed to that, you're not going to stamp it out. It's not going to make things better if you stamp it out. I mean, I don't think I would personally advocate going for those things. But I'm also not in that position. And the same thing about abortion and whatnot. I'm not in that position to be able to say it's not my body. It's not something I would choose, but it's also not something I'd ever have to choose. And I feel lucky in that regard, I guess, because it's a difficult choice to make because it's scary. Health stuff is scary. Taking health matters into your own hands is scary. So I don't like this line of thinking. It's not going to make things better by avoiding this. You're never ever going to get to a point where you don't have to fight. You might get to a point where the next guy in line who's going to get hit on by the right wing is going to get shit on, but you're never going to get to the point where you're accepted. The only thing you can do in those cases is try to accept people as they are, as an individual. I can't stop the right wingers from hating my LGBTQ friends, but I can at very least be good to them, and maybe not criticize overly the things they need to get help.
No,
You know,
100%. Yeah.
Like we shouldn't be throwing the toaster oven in the fucking bathwater and like playing Risk. But I do think that there should be some middle ground. There should be some discussion. There should definitely be like a state agency or doctors getting together to do more research on this kind of stuff and coming to a thorough conclusion.
Sure, Mudahar, but this is this is a minor criticism, right?
Mhm.
Like directionally, I don't have a problem with anything
Whatever consultant told her to say directionally should be, played alive
you said in the video.
in Minecraft.
And you're right, this is a US-centric point of view that I'm giving to you. But it is, swear to God, political war on trans children right now. Even legally, through gender clinics, there's a massive operation to shut all of that down. And I want to be really clear. Like, I don't think the system is working very well. I think it needs to be overhauled. I think the safeguards that are in place are not functioning very well. I was really astonished with one study that showed only 79% of people going to gender clinics and getting HRT meet the WPATH standard, which blew my mind. So, like, it's clear something's got to change, but I just felt like there's this context in your video that you're criticizing DIY. And I think from the trans community's point of view, it's like the Democratic Party is not making like trans healthcare access a really big priority, right? It's under attack by the Republicans. So I think trans people.
Well, that's the problem, right? It's not that the Democratic Party's not making a priority. It's that it's a losing priority politically, and it's a winning one for Republicans. They can frame it however they want, and then you have to sit there picking apart their lies. And at the end of the day, what are you doing politically? You are fighting over 1% of the population, and there's way more votes opposing trans healthcare than there is picking it up. And here's the problem. I don't think it's necessarily a bad political strategy on the part of the Democrats to kind of put that to the side and focus on other things that they can get traction on. However, the problem with the Democrats that you consistently have is that the Democrats win elections and then they don't fucking do anything. They don't have big mandates and they have a hard time doing things in the first place. But like the Republicans do a very good job of trying to slip things past the goalie when they have control of Congress. The Democrats don't do a very good job of that. And a part of that is the media environment makes it very prohibitively difficult for them to do these things. But there's a disconnect, right? There's a simple disconnect of voters and the Democratic Party. The voters, particularly, you see a lot of those never Biden type people emerging right now, and they'll be like, "Well, I'm never going to vote for Biden because he didn't do this, this, and this." And I get the impetus that people have for that kind of idea, like, "Oh, I'm not going to vote for the Democrats. They haven't done anything for me," except two things. First of all, the Republicans are objectively worse, and second of all, the thing that happens when you do not vote is that your priorities never become the politicians' priorities. Politicians do not care about polls. They care about polls of likely voters. If you are a cohort that does not vote, then you're not going to get your needs met. So the thing to do is not to say, "Oh, we're not going to vote." And I get why people say we're not going to vote. It's stupid. Don't do that. No one's ever given a flying fuck about people who don't vote. However, the idea is to get everyone to vote about your issues. That's how you move the needle, to be honest. Because let's be frank, all these people running around going, "Yeah, we're going to conquer NATO and we're going to do this revolution, blah, 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 blah." They're insane. That's not going to happen. He'll get flattened 5 minutes, tops. Then the army will go home for lunch. It'd be the shortest civil war on record. So if you want to move the needle, go vote. Go do these things. Put your issues where people can see them by voting, by building a coalition around it. Don't be like Brianna Wu. Brianna Wu doesn't build a coalition. She talks about coalitions. She talks about public policies. She talks about public policies so you won't criticize her. And she goes, well, we have to focus us on this in a policy perspective. But tell me when have you ever heard Brianna Wu talk about policies in any real sense? When is it, well, we're going to do this. We're going to reduce truancy by taking children and bopping them on the head. And if we reduce truancy by 50% by bopping school children that are out of school on the head, this policy will be a success. No, she just says public policy, do-do-do, and waves a magic wand and expects you to be impressed. And that's nonsense. Don't do those things. I'm not going to listen to that part anymore. Let's skip ahead to where Sunday is now.
No one's going to win in that department, right? Like, so I don't know. There's a lot of things that I guess, I don't know. That's where my mind sort of stands. That's where I come out into. And, you know, I think the weird part is like any form of, I guess, discussion about this, it's like if you're not 100% with the most extreme left or right end, it's like you either get painted as like an extreme transphobe and whatnot. Like, look, here's my personal belief, right? Like,
well, look how opportune we come in at just the right moment. I hate this opinion. This is the kind of opinion that you can only really hold and truly believe if you spend way too much fucking time online. The vast majority of people on an everyday basis in the United States and most other countries do not care about extreme online opinions. You can get up and you can say whatever the hell you want. You can say, oh, the Great Replacement is real, or imperialism is an all-white occupying force, blah, 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 blah. And these things are patently usually untrue that people say on the extreme ends. But people think that this dominates the discourse because the extremists are able to generate a lot more buzz online than they are ever able to generate in traditional politics. So I think a great example of this is maybe not this year, because this year's been pretty tightly done by the Republicans to a certain extent. There was no real competition to Trump. But like for the last couple elections, you would see Ron Paul and Rand Paul. You'd see them being massive forces online. You'd see like people screaming on Facebook, especially when Facebook was still relevant, about how important Rand Paul is going to take the world by storm and win elections, and then no one shows up for the election in real life. Fringe opinions are just that, fringe. They aren't really worth focusing or spending a lot of energy on, because that person who's sitting there going, yeah, Rand Paul says buy all the gold, is going to buy all the gold maybe, but it's not going to make a difference. And the truth of the matter is that if you focus on these fringe ideas, you never talk about the important actual things that people are talking about. And that's where the conversation needs to be. The conversation needs to be about what everyday people are considering and talking about. So, like, what do they think about Israel? What do they not online, not the endless bickering back and forth between the pro-IDF side going, Israel is blameless and has never done anything wrong, despite the fact that that's patently absurd, and the people going, Hamas is our freedom fighters who we should support. That's also patently absurd. Like most people fundamentally recognize nuance. They just don't feel like talking about it because they get shouted at and if they try to enter a public forum about that sort of thing. So nuance wins every time. And like, that's, I think, the principal problem with people like Wick and Brianna Wu is they don't care about Jewish people. Jewish people are irrelevant to them. They suddenly remember that Jewish people existed after October 7th. It was not a single thing that they give a flying fuck about prior to October 7th. But all of a sudden, there are these very vocal people who say silly things online that they can make fun of. And it becomes very easy to weaponize this concept of oh, look at all these horrible anti-Semites on the left. to kind of pretend like you're taking a principled stand. And it's, nobody's on Twitter who are never going to hold office, never going to vote, never going to do anything really of substance in the political realm. And you're spending an awful lot of energy arguing with people who don't do anything. So is anti-Semitism bad? Yes. Has it been increased after October 7th? Inevitably. But so is anti-Palestinianism. So is Islamophobia. All of these things have increased in turn after October 7th because of the response of each group to one another. Point those things out, to be sure, but point them out in equal measure. Israelis do not need someone to defend them. They are fairly adequately defended under a blanket of American money. The Palestinians, however, do need someone to speak up for them because no one has for decades. This is the first time in decades that people have had the opportunity to speak up for Palestinians, that they've seen what's happening to Palestinians. And yeah, there's a lot of work to separate fact from fiction, but that's in any conflict. And it feels dirty to me that you have people who will sit there and pretend like they just discovered the problem of anti-Semitism, and it's something they must stand against. And they're fighting with 4 randos on Twitter. You can. It's not genuine. It's not a real thing, and I don't believe. Eventually, this will fall away, just like their support for Ukraine falls away, or something else. These are not things that honest people like. Anytime you see someone strongly coming out in that way for a single side in a conflict, and completely ignoring the effects it has, they're not being genuine interlocutors about that.
I read today that I said I had traditional beliefs, so people thought that I was like a fucking really rad, super conservative guy. My traditional beliefs are, me and my wife, we grew up, with a traditional family. We have like gender norms and whatnot. Like we have roles and shit. That's my traditional stuff,
Sure.
I'm the fucking breadwinner for the family, and she works too, but we have a mom-dad kind of role thing going on, and that's how we were raised. We turned out fine, so we try to emulate what worked out fine for us. And then today I also read, like, she said that, because she's very much like obviously the medical practitioner, she's like, I'm not going to support that Otokonoko Pharmaceuticals like
No, of course not.
DIY.
Of course you shouldn't support that. Of course not.
I prefer other forms of therapy, and I was reading on like this insane Reddit board. It's like fucking, does she promote conversion therapy? And it's insane because like she's from the state of California. That shit has been outlawed since fucking 2013 for Muslims. That is very much not in our thing, and even in our family, right? Like we have gay people in our family that would be very much against that. So it's one of those things where it's like,
this is what's so hard.
Okay, that it's outlawed in the state of California doesn't in and of itself mean she doesn't support it. I'm not saying that what they said is accurate, but you haven't refuted it. The I have gay friends is not the defense you think it is.
Hard about the conversation right now is it is impossible for anyone to have a moderate position on anything trans. I'm 46. I am old enough to remember that when you transitioned, these were the steps. You had to go to a therapist and get 3 months of therapy. If they decided you met the DSM criteria, then you could start on hormones. Right. Then if you got on hormones with a therapist letter, by the way, and then you went and lived for a year in the gender you identified with, then you could go get 2 letters from 2 other psychologists and a psychiatrist.
Exactly, Palm Dad. There are plenty of conservative gay people. There are plenty of red parts of California. There are plenty of people who do not agree with the laws of their state. I saw a gun YouTube channel refer to being in California as behind enemy lines. Like, all right, dude, maybe drop the melodrama. You're being a little Karenish about this.
That would show that you're mentally fit, and then at that point you could go get GRS, which is gender change surgery, right? That was a radical radical thing within my lifetime. I'm talking about the 90s, right?
Well, by and large, most states are deeply red outside of major cities. It's just that no one lives outside of major cities. The vast majority of people on the planet Earth live in urban centers. Stop. No. Stop. Not interested in the ad. Don't show more ads. Get rid of the ads. Less ads.
And today, that system has changed a lot where you can literally skip all that therapy, go to Planned Parenthood, and get HRT with what they call informed consent. There are really good arguments for informed consent, but there are also really good arguments for the way it used to be. And the problem is it's so heightened emotionally on both sides. We can't have a public policy discussion in the middle based on science to come to better outcomes for all involved. This discussion is serving no one. The trans community is losing rights at a blistering rate.
But there's no middle ground discussion that's going to change the right wing's position. Like again, you're making the fallacy of assuming that if you present this thing in a palatable way, that they'll allow you to exist. Everyone, every oppressed minority in history has made that decision, has turned out to regret it. So, like, I don't see what you think you're saying here, Wu. I mean, that's not how. That's not how I like. That's how you function politically. You have to make a stand for your rights eventually, and you run into rather significant issues if you have politicians being intermediaries between you and your doctor. Which
It has gotten better and better and better.
Do you remember, Beckett?
Sure.
Do you
Go ahead.
remember the date of the release of the Destiny doc?
Oh, God. No, not off the top of my head.
Can we find out quickly?
Yeah, sure. Give me a second.
There's a
Let's see
reason
if
why
I
I'm
can help
interested.
you.
Do you remember if they covered the HRT stuff in there?
let's skip ahead again. What you doing? We're just going to be repeating various things.
I'm just seeing if there were other comments that she made about this.
So,
Why is because she's speaking here in fairly general terms. Like, it's not like a smoking gun or anything, but it's rubbing me the wrong way that she's pretending like... Why the hell didn't that save?
when you say she's speaking here, do you mean in the conversation with Musa?
I mean on Twitter here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, hang on.
Just so I'm on the same page.
Yeah, no, I got
so
you.
to speak.
I'll just pop that onto the screen. So, like, we've already seen this. This isn't new, but this is 2 days after the manifesto dropped.
Sure.
So, like,
You know, I bet you if I started going in an anti-Sunday rant, I could get Brianna Wu to get on my side, despite the fact that I never said a nice word about her. Just a thought, like this woman is truly psychotically insane.
I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, so this... I wonder. So, how about just Brianna Wu Keffels? Today is the 5th day in the row I've seen Keffel's trending. This is October 22nd. Not the push to end trans healthcare in Florida, not the post-national ban on even being able to say LGBT people. Is this?
What happened? Oh, okay. We're okay. We're alive. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning here. I have taken 2 cups of coffee. I'm not going to sleep anytime soon. I can't hear anybody. Four in the morning. That would put you somewhere on the East Coast then, right?
By the way, this is meandering, so you don't need to stick around if you're getting bored or whatever. Don't feel like you need to.
No, you're good. I've got another 15 minutes,
Okay.
20 minutes maybe.
I'm searching because I'm interested now.
Files are
Well,
massive.
so am I to an extent. I think so. It's a weird one with Wu because I would expect Wu to, do what Wu does on Twitter, which is attack dog. That doesn't surprise me. I suppose the core thing is so again. What's your question? I guess what question are you trying to answer?
I want to know if there is a particular reason to think that she knew, because she claimed to not know about the DIY HRT stuff entirely. She claimed to be ignorant about that. Mm-hmm. I want to know if that's a lie. And it would take exactly one thing. There has to be.
We would appreciate everyone being out here anyway.
Somebody pointing it out, and her responding to it. It would take one tweet.
He turned into something truly terrible and can't see it. Oh, well, his YouTube channel.
Now we see here people are absolutely pointing out.
Uh-oh. Broke. YouTube broke. Are we still alive? Here on this end? Yeah. We're still alive.
Bathtub HRT in the comments. Oh.
Of course we are. Oh, yeah, this is a wonderful Brianna Wu comment. The Borg in Star Trek are basically a metaphor for progressivism. You have to think the same thoughts of the hive mind, and if you deviate, you will be destroyed for the good of the collective. Individuality is erased. There is no hierarchy. Well, first of all, the Borg in Star Trek are not progressive. The Borg in Star Trek are the capitalist machine brought to its logical conclusion. Second of all, you don't have to think the same thoughts. You are forced to think the same thoughts. Your individuality is taken from you, and you are made a cog in a machine. There's no choice involved. People do not go, well, I'm going to go be assimilated today. At least not usually. There also is a hierarchy to the Borg. They have a queen. Someone wasn't watching Star Trek too well. Oh, yeah, we're alive again.
Wasn't there oh fuck, what was it? I feel like when that conversation was happened, when that conversation happened, the organization that
Isn't there an isolated Borg community? So there are a couple storylines, particularly in Voyager, where they have isolated Borg who either seek to rejoin the collective or set up their own collective. And then there's the thing that happened in season 2 of Picard, where what's her face from Scott Pilgrim, the drummer. We're Sex Mabob, and we're here to break shit and help Scott kick your ass or something like that. Fuck, what's her name? You know who I'm talking about, guys. She becomes a Borg queen, and then she turns into good Borg, and then they tacitly say, well, that was a bunch of bullshit in season 3 of Picard, because each season of Picard had to deal with the problems that came from the last one. Speaking of which, the next episode of Discovery is out tonight. You should watch that if you haven't. Make Paramount Plus stop canceling shows. But the Borg are not progressive. They are like that's. Brianna Wu does not have good media literacy, so she decided to talk about Star Wars for a little bit, and she's like, the Rebel Alliance is good guys. They're totally good terrorists, except she didn't say they were terrorists. And I pointed out to her that Andor, the whole point of the show of Andor and Rogue One, is to display people like Andor Cassin as terrorists. It's like, no, they never committed terrorism. I'm like, excuse me. In the middle of Andor, they take an Imperial officer's family hostage in order to compel him to do a thing. That's textbook terrorism. It was shortly after that, like 2 or 3 days later, that she blocked me. So, Brianna Wu doesn't have very good media literacy to begin with. And she just likes to project her own insecurities onto things.
I was doing it. The Keffels was...
Keffel said that?
No, that was days before.
Days before.
Give me 1 second. Just let me read something.
Okay.
Okay. So there was this one, October 22nd, which is
Today's
like
the 50
after.
and the roast and Keffel's trending. Okay.
Yeah, so you got that one. So
Yeah, too vague. She can wiggle out of that one.
yeah, I don't think there's anything tighter than that. I think that's the only
Slippery
tweet
devil.
of fake shot.
I don't think there's any chance that Brianna Wu is going to be caught. But she almost certainly knew what Keffels was up to and probably approved of it at the time. I mean, let's be frank, that's how she operates. Well, Brianna Wu is one of those people in which every accusation... Brianna Wu is one of those people which every accusation is an admission. So like when she says Sunday's an alcoholic, I'm like, but you sound sloshed half the time when you get on. The Jedi are dumb, whiny bitches. The Rebel Alliance get shit. The Jedi are really problematic in so many ways. And like there are good Star Wars stories that kind of deal with this particular issue. The principal one, I think, Knights of the Old Republic 2 is a really good example of this. You, depending on whether you're male or female, you get a follower called the Disciple. I think it's the Disciple. And whether or not you get him as a follower, when you meet him in the Jedi Temple on Dantooine, he talks at some length for you about how regular people see the Sith and the Jedi. And it's a very interesting thing. So he talks about how people see the Sith and the Jedi as two religious orders fighting one another over finer points of dogma.
Just cry.
And hang on, I don't know.
Getting people activated for elections. So I think that's really important to model for people, like putting small differences aside and trying to get done what you.
I don't know where they're at right now. At any point, The Rebel Alliance or the Jedi and the Sith are seen as two sides of the same coin. And if you kind of think about that from a standpoint of like Star Wars, so you have Knights of the Republic, which is set about 4,000 years before the movies, and you have the Jedi and the Sith leading massive armies of regular people into combat against one another in a galactic spanning war over points of religious dogma. And then it happens again and again and again, and one side just starts to destroy the other. And you got to figure billions of people are getting lost. Certainly billions of people are getting lost when they explode planets on a regular basis. Billions of people are getting lost in an interscene religious conflict that never ends, ever. And that's like an implication of Star Wars that's horrifying. And the other half of the Jedi equation is you have light side users and dark side users. And then you have this category of gray Jedi that's kind of debated by the fan community. And I can certainly see the arguments that come forth for why, like, gray Jedi are just silly, stupid things that let you use cool dark side force powers without being evil, and try not to commit to something. And, like, it doesn't functionally work inside the dichotomy that Lucas creates for the Jedi. There's no middle ground that he allows for. You're either good or bad as a Jedi. And even the rogue characters like Han Solo. Is Han Solo a criminal? Yes. Is he a bad person? Not really. Jabba's a criminal and also a bad person. There's not a lot of moral ambiguity in Star Wars, so that really allows for the creation of gray Jedi. So Star Wars is like tricky, and that's why largely the best stories in Star Wars end up being kind of the idea of rejecting the dichotomy of the Force and rejecting the Force entirely. Kriya is a great example of that in Knights of the Republic 2. And I liked The Last Jedi because it had overtures of that kind of concept, where Luke has rejected the conception of the Force entirely, as something to be wielded on behalf of others, and really only uses it on behalf of himself and isolates himself. His intent is to die on that planet, far away, and let the Jedi die with him. Mandalorians are another huge problem. Hetman loves Boba Fett. He adores the character Boba Fett, and I find Boba Fett to be an obnoxious character on the face of it. Because he does nothing, he's ineffective. He has 3 lines, one of which is "ah," and he dies, and then he shoots people and misses. His entire contribution to the story is that, and he looks fucking ridiculous. It's like, I'm green, yellow, and gray. Why? Why did you think this looked cool? Why did you think this looked cool? And of course, it didn't. It did not look cool. It was silly looking. The armor was silly looking. Like, how can you see out of that? Why would you have a design like that in a place where you have this technology? But here we are, and the Mandalorians have kind of evolved into this silly thing. Like, if you look at their armor design, let's look at their armor design in KOTOR. This is gonna jump me left like 5,000 freaking ads. I'm gonna regret this in a minute. Look at that. That looks ridiculous. Kill it before the ads come. And the Mandalorians play into this proud warrior race culture. And to the credit of Lucas and Filoni, they did a good job kind of pointing out why that's bullshit in Clone Wars. But here's the problem with this trope. And you have the same problem with the Klingons in Star Trek. One, cultures require other things to function, and these things are never really truly explored that often in these settings. So the Mandalorians are just silly, and like people compare them to things like Sparta, not realizing how Sparta functioned. Uh and they're just a generally silly concept.
You can't.
So that's
all. But I feel that was part of the shutdown, and Keffels was a very golden child during this. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one to see the turn. I think I think the weird thing with the conversations with Brianna and everything else is it's I don't know. Brianna wanted to come on and have a political conversation, which is a weird thing to try and do in commentary because commentary is drama. That's why I like it. But whether I don't know, how do you fact check?
Brianna Wu doesn't want to have a political conversation and commentary. She wants to pretend like she's having a political conversation and have it be drama in order to pretend like she's done something.
Like the vagary of opinions.
Well, there'd be two ways that I can think of. The first would be use some kind of software to look up deleted Discord messages. The second would be use another piece of software to see if she commented at all inside of anybody's .gg pages. And I wonder if you can find something mentioning them there, because all you would need here.
Well, our father in the green, the other half of it is that like the impression that we get of Sparta comes from Athenian writers, particularly around the time of the Peloponnesian War. So you end up with this messed up kind of concept from Pericles and Thucydides about Sparta that doesn't take into account the reality of the Spartan society. There are a couple really good things on YouTube about Spartan society done by the ditch guy, Professor Raul Klondik, who talks about Spartan society at some length that are worth watching. We might do those one time.
Is just some sentence to the effect of like, this is a problem with the manifesto. I've read the manifesto. Anything that indicates familiarity with the contents of the manifesto. Because you need something very simple. She's claiming total ignorance of the DIY HRT thing. If she's come across the words DIY HRT in connection with Keffels, then we know that's not true. She'd have
It's going to sound really dumb, but I am not trolling you. Has Wick ever had a debate on this?
That is a smart question. Although interestingly, when I look up Wick HRT, Brianna Wu from 2 months ago comes up. The first video on the top, 2 months ago, Brianna Wu Gamergate 2. I'm curious. Let's see. So if I look at their transcript, do I find that? Because Short Fat Otaku might bring that up. That's something that he would probably talk about. Yourself, no. Hormones. Therapy. No. Okay, no dice. Well, it was worth a shot.
Well, look, I'm going to go and bitch somebody about
Take it easy.
stuff, because I think I've got a call in 10. Thanks. This has been fun. Enjoy the rest of the stream.
See ya.
All right.
Peace.
I think we're moving into this part. Here we go. Good evening, everybody.
This is probably a wild goose chase, but
I'm turning off Sunday stream. Let's go into our meat and potatoes for the evening. This is Israel. This is the... Why is it not moving? I sometimes hate this website. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us from Sunday. We are going to do a little bit of, you missed all the Wuisms that I was doing before. You can go back and watch them later. We're going to do a little bit of Palestine and Israel news today. Well, mostly actually Egypt and Israel. So here we are. This is the Rafah crossing. God. This is the Rafah crossing. It is a kind of a critical part in the Camp David Accords, which is the peace treaty that was negotiated by Jimmy Carter between the state of Israel and the state of Egypt back in the 70s. And it kind of leads into the other peace process points for the Middle East. But among these, among the terms of this is that Israel is not to occupy this line, which includes the Rafah crossing and the Philadelphia access. They are not to occupy this line. It's a violation of the accords for them to do so. Egypt has been pretty chill about much of this, as we talked about last time on it with the Israel-Palestine stream. Egypt has been very restrained about this. They have moved forward with deploying troops to the border and evacuating hospitals in this general region in particular, and of the Sinai area, and just started moving people out of these neighborhoods. This morning, at least morning as far as Israel is concerned, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning there. Israel's version of Air Force One, which is called Zion Wing because no one in the Middle East is capable of subtlety, took off and started flying around the Mediterranean in lazy loops. That sort of thing happens in countries when they expect an attack. They'll put the head of state or the executive on a plane and fly them around. Air Force One does this if we expect a strike in Washington, D.C. That's why, for example, on 9/11, Bush spent much of the day either in the school or on Air Force One. The trouble that comes of this is if there's a war between Egypt and Israel, it's going to be nasty. The last time this happened was in 1973, and Israel nearly loses the war. They appeal at the last minute to the United States, who turn around and give them an emergency dump of weapons to help them fight back because they were being overrun. There are a number of things now that are different. It's no longer 1973. Egypt is a very different country. In the Cold War, Egypt is very aligned with the Soviet Union. They receive Soviet weapons, they buy Soviet weapons, they use Soviet weapons. There is a very real danger for us at this time that Egypt closes the Suez Canal to shipping, and this is a significant issue, which makes it advantageous at the time to support Israel as a counterbalance to that. They are a force that can conceivably open the Suez Canal if Egypt closes it. We are 50 years on from the 70s now, and a lot of things have happened in this time. Egypt is no longer firmly aligned in one camp or another. They have decided to play both sides against the middle. They play the Russians against the Americans against the Russians. The other thing that's happened is they have taken a very good, long, hard look at the military state of the Middle East. And they engage in a certain level of pragmatism about how things are happening and what is happening in the Middle East and what they should do. So they've bought all new weapon systems. They have a modern Air Force full of American and Russian planes. They have M1 Abrams tanks. They have RAPCs. They have a whole bunch of equipment that they just didn't have in the 70s. And that's not to say that in a conflict between Egypt and Israel that Egypt's automatically going to win. But the IDF has missed a few beats. They're not the same army that fought in 76. They're not the same army that fought in 73. And something to notice about Israel is small. Israel's not a big country at all. And that old tag from Fallout, war never changes, is very untrue. War changes all the time. One of the lessons we've learned in Ukraine is that there aren't really rear areas that are safe anymore. It might have been, oh, I'm stationed on an airbase. I'm probably not going to get attacked because we have plenty of warning, etc., etc., etc. Loitering munitions like Iran sells to everyone like candy, or cruise missiles, make these things much more difficult. So there's nowhere in Egypt or Israel that's really safe. Weapons are just more advanced these days. Yeah, I'm kind of getting to that, Jem. So, like, the idea traditionally for Israel is they have fought enemies on multiple fronts one at a time, and they've concentrated on air power. For example, in 1967, they opened the war by destroying the Israeli Air Force on the ground. This is much harder to do, and it's also not guaranteed anymore. A lot more early warning systems, a lot more advanced air defense systems make that less likely. And Egypt's putting them on the border. And the other half of it is there isn't really safe ground anymore that you can kind of hide behind. Like, it's very possible that airfields can be struck without using planes. It's very possible you can fire missiles or munitions, and you can do damage to these things and degrade your air capacity even without necessarily launching an air force or being able to stop it. And you'll recall a couple months ago, actually it was only about a month ago now, it's been a very long 7 months of Israel getting their butts kicked. Iran launches this massive attack that America and the rest of the Middle East help Israel to stop. Israel did not participate that much in shooting these things down. And the reason for that is that they have the system called Iron Dome, which we pay for, which is very good at shooting down rockets from Hezbollah and Hamas, but it's not very good at shooting down missiles. And the long and the short of it is that any war between these two powers is going to be a lot more deadly than it would have been in 1973. And the other half of this equation is Egypt has one of the largest chemical weapons programs in the Middle East. Israel has the only nuclear weapons program that we know of in the Middle East, and it's kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We have nukes, but they don't admit that, because if they did, the United States is forced to sanction Israel under our anti-proliferation laws. So we just sort of, everyone pretends that Israel doesn't have nukes. If both sides are threatened, there is an excellent chance that they will use these weapons on one another. And if they do that, millions of people will die. So when we talk about Israel versus Egypt, we're talking about a serious problem. A lot of people have tried to frame this as something that's good, that it will stop the genocide. That's just not the case. It will make everything so much worse. Israel has a policy of strategic ambiguity with pertinent to the use of their nuclear weapons. There is a rumor that they have thought of using them in the past. For example, in 1967, there was a rumor that they had a plan to detonate a nuclear weapon in the Sinai Peninsula to show the Egyptians that they were serious. Well, that's the key, Jump. That's where they would start fighting at first. But any fight in Gaza will not stay contained to Gaza. It's just not practical for Israel to do so. Kind of like France, a little bit like France's nuclear policy, except it's Israel takes the attitude of, oh, do we have nuclear weapons? Why don't you fuck around and find out? Which is probably the most sensible policy to take in the event of not being able to admit you have them. But by the same token, it does not mean, it doesn't have the same deterrent effect that our if you invade us we'll drop nukes on you has. And that's why most countries keep nuclear weapons on board, to be able to make that threat, or in Russia's case, to try to blackmail you into doing what they don't want you to do. And so, like, I think, what's Cairo? Oh, 9 million, 9.5 million people in the city of Cairo? Let's look. These are old cities, and they tend to have large populations. $9.54 million a couple of 5 years ago. Israel couldn't devote its full military. Yes, they do have to maintain a force in the north to confront Hezbollah. Additionally, they have to maintain forces in Gaza or in the West Bank, because they have to protect their settlements. Because the settlers aren't really capable of fully protecting themselves. They're mostly just good at murdering people. Israel has a lot of responsibilities to protect. I'm curious how the U.S. would respond if a war broke out between Egypt and Israel. I have a sneaking suspicion that they have been trying to stop that for days. I posted it in the cathedral. I'm going to bring it up here just to point it out. Hang on. There's an Egyptian spokesperson today who said, and hopefully it's just posturing, the assessment in Cairo is that the government in Israel does not understand talk and condemnation, but only actions and steps. The Egyptian government's patience with her, being the government of Israel, has run out. So the rhetoric has been increasing on both sides. I suspect that Blinken and Biden both are capable of, or at the very least capable of, stopping any immediate fight. Part of the Camp David Accords was that we pay a significant amount of money to Egypt to placate them about this. And this was talks happened back when Anwar Sadat was still alive. Anwar Sadat, who was a 6 out of 10 on the hotness scale for Jumped. If you'd like to see us rate all the Egyptian leaders going back to the New Kingdom on a scale of 1 to 10 for how hot they are, we are taking donations in the down below description box for $100. Thank Jump for that idea. $5.5 for Sadat. No, he's a solid 6. Solid 6. The other thing I would point out, let's take this opportunity. There are 55 of you in here. If you could all like the stream and then subscribe, it'd make me very happy if you haven't done so already. There, we have this. 6.9 for Sissy. We don't know where Sissy is. Where is he? He needs to come out. He needs to say something. He's been hiding for the last week, which is never a good sign. At any rate, the idea that Egypt going to war is going to save Palestinians probably isn't going to help. Palestinians would be caught in the middle. They have nowhere to go. There's a significant Palestinian population in Egypt as well. One of the things that's probably worth mentioning, I think, is that Destiny, for example, is one of the people who does this. He likes to bring up, oh, if the Palestinians weren't a problem, why don't the Arab peoples take them in and give them citizenship? They are reluctant to do this for a number of reasons. The first is because that legitimizes what Israel is trying to do to them. And the second is no one likes to take in refugees. It's just very unpopular, broadly speaking, for most populations, and it tends to be a destabilizing effect. And there's a broad consensus amongst the Middle Eastern countries, the Arabic countries, that Palestine should have its own state, because they don't want them in their own countries. And if they allow Israel to kick the Palestinians out, that won't happen, and they'll have to put up with that. Also, you're talking about moving 5 million people when you take the West Bank and the Gaza into consideration. Well, a little less now because they've been murdering them. But you're talking about taking 5 million people into Jordan and Egypt and Lebanon. Lebanon's been a mess since the 80s and will not improve anytime soon. Syria's been a mess since the 2010s and will not improve anytime soon. So that's not really a good option. Iraq is also a poor plan. So they're not going to go to anyone but Egypt or Jordan if they're going to go anywhere. And this is less than ideal. This is less than ideal for Egypt, who has a considerable amount of debt, and the Houthis have been cutting into their ability to make money significantly. So there is no real option. Even if they wanted to take them, they don't have the capability to do so. And they don't really want to give Israel the satisfaction. So there's no real capability for that. Syria is in a perpetual civil war. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. Russia is not nearly the decisive force they like to think they are. I also point that this is the most recently updated map. You'll see that Israel is still happily blowing the crap out of northern Gaza all day long. So I'm sure that the death numbers are... Stop. Bad. No. The death numbers will have to be revised up again. Also, while we're here and I have a captive audience, it is absolutely untrue that the United Nations has revised down the death toll in Gaza of women and children. What has happened is the Gaza Health Ministry, which is, yes, run by Hamas and paid for by the United States. I have not watched Adam Something in a while. What happened is they have changed what their categorization for fully positively identified deaths are. The total number of reported deaths has not changed. The number of deaths that they can confirm and say, Billy Bob Thornton got killed by an Israeli bomb has gone down. The odds are going to sit, I think, at 1 to 3 for civilian losses. 3 civilians dead for every militant killed when this is said and done. For the moment, unless something changes significantly, which would be significantly above the all-time average or the accepted average. You'll see people quoting something like 9 to 1 in this obscene number that they just made up, primarily. There was a survey done of conflicts between 1700 and 1980, and a calculation of the average civilian deaths for this. And this is really the only substantive number that you can count on in the realm of military history. It's a limited data set, and that's all that's ever going to happen because we don't have reliable numbers for everything. But the average, and the average number of civilians killed to combatants in war is usually 2 to 1. Right, they have unidentified bodies of women and children that are no longer included until they have full information. Now, the only thing they've done that's really weird in the count is they have elderly as its own separate category. And I don't know why, but there it sits. The other half of this, like, people have tried to poo-poo these numbers, like, oh, there's too many children being killed. Except that the vast majority of the population of Gaza is under the age of 16. You also see a number of accounts trying to claim that everyone above the age of 16 is Hamas. And Hamas, that's an absurd claim on its face as well. There's no real indication that that's the case. You don't what, Obsidian Heart? I've said many things in quick succession. If you need me to clarify something, you'll have to be more specific. All right. That is about all the news that's fit to print. I'm going to make a double check before I speak again, because it's been 15, 20 minutes since I checked Twitter. This could fire off at any time. That's the wrong account. There are two principal concerns that the Egyptian government has about Israel controlling the border crossing. The first is they're not allowed to. So the Egyptian government has a vested interest in having Israel adhere to the terms of the Camp David Accords. And the problem that you run into with Israel, for example, the other month when they bombed the Iranian consulate, Israel does not feel compelled to follow international law, and no one really compels them to do so. They don't get flack the way the United States might get if something like that happened. For example, and we accidentally bombed the Chinese embassy in Bosnia during the Bosnian operation, and that was a big deal. No one really majorly condemned Israel for the embassy. Egypt has two concerns. Their first concern is that Israel's going to throw a whole bunch of Palestinian refugees over the fence, and they'll be stuck with them. The second concern is if they don't hold Israel to account for their obligations under the treaty, no one will. And they will be forced to take a hit again and again and again in the name of peace. And they can't do that because Israel is basically a rogue nuclear state at this point. They are absolutely insane. There's talk of the fact that they're going to try to destroy the Palestinian Authority financially, which will widen the war into the West Bank dramatically. I mean, 400 or 500 people have already been killed in the West Bank, but that's kind of par for the course. Like, people die in the West Bank all the time because the Israelis got their boot on the neck of the Palestinians there. Yeah, so like they have to respond to Israel as a matter of diplomatic course in the exact same way that Iran had to respond to Israel directly and launch those drones from Iran into Israel. Then they would cross 3 countries to get there. And like it makes a lot of sense to tell Hezbollah to fire some rockets off, right? That would probably get a couple through. But the message was, we are Iran and we can defend our sovereignty. For Egypt, that's the same message. We are Egyptian, we can defend our sovereignty. It's important for them to do so. Hopefully that answers your question. What's Leo complaining about? Oh, I'll have to tell him thank you later. So I want to leave you with something. Why we don't listen to Brianna Wu about Israel. Let's download this one and this one. Because I promised you Brianna Wuisms, and if you only came in from Sunday, you won't see them. Respectfully, let's just go through some history. Directionally, in 2000, Palestinians walk away from a very, very good peace deal which included a sovereign state. A free Palestine, if you will. They then launched the Second Intifada. Let's stop you right there, Brianna. In 2000, the Palestinians do not walk away from a very good peace deal. They walk away from a shit deal. I have been talking with Sunday. He wants to do a video on this, and I want to do a video on this, and we have crossed purposes. I need to go bug him about it. The peace deal that Israel presents to Palestinians gives the Palestinians no right to defend themselves. They are subject to being occupied by Israel any given time. They have to give up territory, vital territory in the West Bank, to Israeli settlements. The Israeli settlements have roads that Palestinians cannot use that connect them, and cut the West Bank into 3 or 4 pieces, depending on who you believe, and nobody at Camp David wrote anything down. So we have a number of competing accounts for this. And Israel's allowed to occupy the Palestinians' country. They are allowed to control the water. It is not a sovereign state. It is not a good deal. They did not launch the Second Intifada independently of anything. The Second Intifada happens after a Israeli truck driver slams into and kills 4 Palestinians, an Israeli army truck driver, possibly in revenge for the killing of a settler. What happens then is a number of demonstrations break out and a few violent riots, which Israel responds to by deploying 20,000 troops to Gaza and the West Bank, who break up demonstrations of any kind, violent or peaceful, with the use of live ammunition. So the Second Intifada doesn't really escalate into a major problem. It's mostly civil disobedience until Israel comes in and starts shooting people. We could both agree that Netanyahu has been horrible, but it's simply factual. It is not. It is not simply factual that Palestinians created the conditions that led to his rise. And here I will take this to all of you while you are here. I will debate Brianna Wu on Israel-Palestine anytime. She's welcome to come on the show. I will crush her. And the reason why I will crush her comes from this next one. Why should Israel exist? It's a settler colonialist atrocity, right? Didn't they steal the Palestinian land in 1948? Yes! Yes, they did. No, the truth is no one knows more about getting genocided and kicked out of their home than the Jews. I'm not a historian. We know you're not a historian. But with all the heated... I didn't read that. The original Jewish presence in the region dates to around 2000 BCE with the 12 tribes. About 700 years later, Egypt saw them as a threat, came in and enslaved them. Moses led a slave revolt with the help of divine intervention, escaped, and after 40 years of exile, okay, she thinks Exodus is history. For the record, Exodus is not supported by archaeological evidence. Additionally, at the time that we're talking about, 2,000 years ago-ish, and you're talking 700 years, so 1300 BCE, Egypt controls Israel's territory. Egypt controls Canaan. They fought battles against the Canaanites. The kingdom of Israel and Judah, 2 separate kingdoms, do not emerge until 300, 400 years later. They last for 600 years and then they're conquered. So if God was really that interested in helping the Israelites keep this land, he wasn't terribly effective at it. And she actually says, with the help of divine intervention, she thinks the Red Sea crossing was a thing that happened. There's a great debate. Well, there's certainly archaeological evidence that puts them in Babylon, but definitely nothing that puts them in Egypt. Also, it's an 8-day walk from Cairo to Jerusalem. There's no earthly consideration that it takes 40 years unless you go around the whole world first. The whole Exodus story is just highly suspect. The kingdom of Israel the combined kingdom of Israel and Judah, the dual monarchy theory is one that's disputed. I've never seen any major disputation of the kingdom of Judah or separate kingdom of Israel next to the Philistine kingdoms in the area that we call Gaza. If you've seen something that disputes the kingdom of Israel specifically, I'd love to see it, but I've never seen anything that disputes it specifically. However, again, ancient history is not my forte. I deal mostly in modern stuff. modern military history. So, yeah, here's H. Palmer guy. So your argument is Exodus is literally true, including the parts where God intervened with magic, or are you just lying on purpose now? She's just lying on purpose. That's it. Brianna Wu is absolutely insane. She is using Jewish people as a virtue signal to try to make herself look better. And frankly, it's disgusting. With that, it is late. You have all been wonderful sports by putting up a Sunday for 4 hours, and me. How long was he on? Hang on. And me for the additional 2. So yeah, I was damn near 4 hours. Or 2.5. And me for an additional 2. I want to wish you all a wonderful morning. Invite you again to subscribe to the channel, and have a great evening.
Lift thine eyes to see thy God. Behold, behold, and harden thou hands. Let the faithful guide the way. Do not fear the darkened path. When you walk alone, remember, burden not your own. Seek shelter on the darkest rim. You will see him beckon you in. And if fate should hold you in her snare, and ye fall and stumble, steady thy mind, lift thine eyes, and thou step shall follow. When you walk alone, burden not your own. On the darkest rim, you will see him Lift thine eyes to see thy God.